powerful army rots from within. An emperor is assassinated by his own guard. The economy collapses as Roman gold mysteriously disappears in caravans heading east. Rome doesn't fall by the sword of barbarians. Rome falls because it devours itself. This is the story of how the most feared empire on the planet began to die, without anyone noticing. 2nd century AD. Rome dominates the world. From the shores of Britain to the deserts of Arabia, Roman legions march victoriously. Cities flourish, roads connect an immense empire, and Roman law imposes order where chaos once reigned. It is the Golden Age, and on the throne sits Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher. Wise, just emperor, and the last of the greats. But every empire makes its fatal mistake, and Rome does so by leaving the throne to its son, Commodus. Commodus is not an emperor, he is a spectacle. Believing himself to be the reincarnation of Hercules, he appears half naked in the Senate and forces the senators to worship him as if he were a living god. He has no interest in politics, war, or justice, only power and his ego. Under his rule, Rome begins to decay. Corruption soars, public offices are sold, the people go hungry, and the state only responds with more taxes. And when Commodus is assassinated by his own concubine and a group of senators, the real hell begins. What follows is a whirlwind of chaos known as the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, more than 20 emperors rise and fall. They are soldiers, generals, usurpers. Some reign for only weeks. Rome becomes an empire of betrayals, swords, and counterfeit coins. One of these emperors, Didius Julianus, buys the throne from the highest bidder. The Praetorian Guard sells it to the highest bidder. They literally auction off the empire. Another emperor, Valerian, is captured by the Persians and used as a human stool by King Shapur IV. He kneels before him, not out of respect, but because they use him as a stepping stone for their horses. This is how humiliated Rome is. Gold coins disappear. The denarius is devalued. Inflation is so brutal that a loaf of bread costs more than a soldier's salary. Merchants stop trusting Roman currency. Some towns simply return to bartering. And it's not just the economy that collapses. The map of the empire also begins to fracture. In the north, the Gallic Empire emerges, an independent Rome with its own emperor, army, and currency. In the east, the Palmyrene Empire is born, led by a queen, Zenobia, who confronts Rome. To make matters worse, the plague arrives. An estimated 1/3 of the empire's population dies. Entire cities are emptied. Cemeteries are overwhelmed. And fear turns to superstition. Some believe the gods have abandoned Rome. In the midst of the chaos, a man appears determined to restore order, Diocletian. In 284, he seizes power with an iron fist. He isn't charismatic, but he is ruthless, and he makes a radical decision. He divides the empire in two, east and west. Thus, the Tetrarchy is born. 4 emperors who ruled together, each one a part of the empire, to prevent further coup d'etat. Diocletian reforms the army, reorganizes the administration, and tries to stabilize the economy. He prohibits the abandonment of land and pursues tax evasion with brutal punishments. But his solution comes at a price: more repression, more taxes, and less freedom. Rome survives, but loses its republican soul. In 305, Diocletian voluntarily retires. He goes to live in a palace on the Dalmatian coast and cultivates his garden. The emperor who saved the empire leaves, and everything begins to shake again. Because what Diocletian cannot stop is the deepest: imperial fatigue. Rome no longer conquers. It survives. It no longer shines. It resists. It lives on its past, on nostalgia. Its culture is divided, its people impoverished, and its borders open. The most surprising thing about this story is that while Rome is crumbling from within, its enemies still wait. The barbarians have not yet attacked with all their fury. Not yet, but they watch. Because the Colossus is cracked. And soon, it will break. In the year 410 AD, something unthinkable happens. Rome is sacked. For the first time in 800 years, enemies enter the sacred city. Women weep, temples burn, senators hide, gold disappears, and the whole world asks the same question. How could the eternal city fall? But the truth is more terrifying. Rome was already dead inside. All it needed was someone to push it. Years before, while the emperors played for power in Constantinople and Ravenna, a shadow grew in the east. The Huns, a people of wild, swift, cruel, unstoppable horsemen. Their arrival unleashes a domino effect that Rome cannot stop. Entire Germanic tribes, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, flee in terror toward the Roman borders, seeking refuge, and Rome lets them in. But not out of compassion. It does so out of necessity. The empire no longer has enough Roman soldiers. The legions are full of mercenaries, barbarians who swear loyalty, only as long as they get paid. In the 5th century, more than half of the Western Roman army is no longer Roman. Rome doesn't integrate them. It marginalizes them, it exploits them, but doesn't deliver. And the Visigoths, humiliated, rebel. In 378, one of the worst military catastrophes in Roman history occurs, the Battle of Adrianople. Emperor Valens underestimates the Visigoths and attacks them without waiting for reinforcements. The result, the Roman army is annihilated, and Valens is burned alive inside a hut. For the first time in centuries, a Roman emperor dies in battle, and not against another empire, but against refugees mistreated by Rome. After the defeat, Rome loses control of the Danube. The Visigoths wander through the Balkans as an army without a homeland. And finally, under the command of their most feared leader, Alaric, they march toward Italy. Rome at that time wasn't even the capital. The emperor had moved to Ravenna, a city surrounded by swamps, easier to defend, but far from the heart of the empire. The Visigoths surround Rome. They demand gold, food, land. Rome pays, but it's too late. In 410, Alaric enters the Eternal City, not as a conqueror, but as a force of history. Temples are looted, ancient statues melted down, the Senate humiliated. The Romans can't believe it. The world can't believe it. St. Jerome from Bethlehem writes, "Who would have thought that Rome would fall, that the mother of the world would be buried?" But the moral blow doesn't stop the falls. Quite the contrary, it's only the beginning. The empire tries to recover. A general appears, Flavius Stilicho, half Roman, half Vandal, a brilliant strategist. He defends Italy, negotiates with the barbarians, keeps the empire united, until he is accused of treason and executed. With his death, the Roman army loses one of its last great leaders. And the enemies know it. The Vandals cross from Hispania to North Africa. They enter Carthage. Rome loses its granaries. Bread disappears. Hunger begins to devour faster than swords. In 455, another sack. This time, worse. The Vandals enter Rome. For 14 days, the city is systematically destroyed. They take gold, slaves, sacred relics. It is said that they even tore off the roof of the Temple of Jupiter. The word vandalism comes from this sack. That's how brutal it was. The empire no longer controls its provinces. Hispania falls. Gaul falls. Britain is abandoned. The emperor is little more than a figurehead, controlled by generals, bishops, and traitors. And amidst all this chaos, a name emerges that will change everything. Attila, the scourge of God, leader of the Huns, demands tribute from the Eastern Emperor, plunders the Balkans, and finally, turns to Italy. In 452, Attila reaches the north of the country. Rome trembles. There are no legions to defend it. Only one man remains, Pope Leo I. He sets out to confront the barbarian, without an army, without weapons. A tense moment. No one knows what they said. But Attila retreats. He does not sack Rome. Some say it was a miracle, others that there was bribery, others that he feared the plague. But Rome, for a moment, breathes. Attila dies shortly after. But Rome does not celebrate, because it can no longer. Emperors change constantly. Some are not even adults. One of them, Priscus Attalus, is named emperor by the Goths themselves. The Western Empire no longer decides its destiny. It is a puppet in the hands of barbarian generals. In the midst of all this, the Romans still believe that order can be restored. They still believe in the past, in the power of the imperial eagle, in the glory of Caesar. But the reality is different. Rome no longer conquers. Rome begs. And very soon, it will lose the only thing it has left, its emperor. Rome no longer rules, survives. Its emperor is a child. Its army is no longer Roman, and its destiny no longer belongs to it. In 476, the Western Roman Empire disappears. Not with a great battle, not with a fire, but with a silent gesture. A barbarian general enters the palace and tells the emperor, "We don't need another Caesar." Thus ended one of the greatest empires in history. But how did we get to that moment? Decades earlier, after the sacking of Rome by the Vandals, the empire was already a shadow. The administration had permanently moved to Ravenna, a marshy and isolated city. Rome still existed, but only in ruins and memories. The provinces no longer obey. Hispania is the land of the Suevi and Visigoths. Gaul is divided between the Franks and Burgundians. Britain is lost. Africa belongs to the Vandals, who now rule the Mediterranean Sea. And without Africa, Rome is starving. Grain no longer arrives. The coffers are empty. The emperor has a title, but no power. Between 455 and 476, Rome had 9 emperors in just 21 years. Some ruled for only weeks. The real power lies in the hands of the generals. One of them is Ricimer, a German who never wanted the throne, but chose who occupied it. For years, he moved emperors in and out like pieces on a chessboard. When Ricimer dies, another general emerges, Orestes, Attila, the Huns' former secretary. A man without scruples, but with ambition, he takes control of what remains of the Roman army and names his own son emperor, a teenager, barely 14 years old. His name is Romulus Augustulus, a name laden with irony. Romulus, like the founder of Rome. Augustus, like the first emperor. But he is neither. He has no power, no army, no authority. He is a puppet with a crown. And then the final actor in this tragedy appears. Odoacer, leader of the Heruli, a barbarian people serving Rome. Odoacer demands land for his soldiers. Orestes refuses, and that seals his fate. Odoacer marches on Italy. In 476, he defeats the Roman army in an inglorious battle. He captures Orestes, he executes him, and enters Ravenna, the imperial capital. There, the young emperor awaits him. Odoacer doesn't kill him. He sends him into exile with a pension and forces him to abdicate. Romulus surrenders the imperial insignia and disappears from history. Thus, the last emperor of Rome leaves the throne without a word, without resistance. The Western Roman Empire is dead, but did it really die? The truth is that Rome doesn't disappear. It transforms. In the East, the Byzantine Empire continues for almost 1,000 more years from Constantinople, dreaming of restoring the lost glory of the West. The Church takes on the role of spiritual guide. The Pope becomes the moral voice of the old empire. Bishops replace the governors. Latin survives, not in the squares, but on the altars. And the barbarian peoples, who once feared Rome, now imitate it. They dress like Romans. They are baptized as Christians. They copy its laws, its customs, its language. The empire falls in 476, but the title of Roman Emperor will be reclaimed by Charlemagne in 800, by the Holy Roman Empire, by Napoleon, by Hitler. Everyone wanted to be the new Caesar. Rome no longer exists as an empire, but it lives on as an idea. as a symbol, as a legend. And perhaps that's the most powerful thing about this story, that Rome fell, and at the same time, it never fully fell. Because as long as there are roads that lead to the center, laws that define justice, columns that still stand, Rome will live on.